I think my superpower is that I meet someone for the first time, I can tell when someone's comfortable with my disability or not. And the people I really value in my life are the people who straight away showed that they weren't uncomfortable or that they could feel really relaxed around me. I don't want people to make a decision on the kind of person I am based off my disability before they've ever spoken to me.
Welcome back to Dive Beyond Sport, the podcast where performance meets humanity. This week, our guest is Stephen Clegg. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Clegg, it's also awesome to have you on, and I think I'll make it clear that from here on out I'll be calling you Cleggy, not Stephen. I don't think I've ever actually called you Stephen before, so...
I don't think so, no. It always throws me off when people switch back.
I'll get there by the end.
When I was kind of researching and learning more about you, and I'm in a position where I know a little bit about you, but there's actually a lot that I really don't know, and I'm really interested to learn a lot from this conversation. But when doing the research, one of the things that really stood out to me is some of the near misses that you experienced in your swimming career so far. 0.06 away from gold in the S12 100-meter butterfly in Tokyo, and 0.01 away from the gold in the S13 50-meter freestyle in Birmingham. Is that right?
Yeah. Both very different relationships with both those results. Birmingham, I was actually quite happy with it, regardless of the fine margins between gold. I had quite a lot of expectations going into it, so I was happy to kind of come away with anything. It was a very close race, so and it was just fun as well. I bet you actually. So it was a pretty cool experience. Whereas Tokyo, on the other hand, was quite a gut-wrenching experience, and took quite a few months to process that result and try to find a positive spin on it and move that forward going through the rest of my career.
In both those moments, you say they're very different circumstances, very different situations, but still tough in many ways. What did you learn about yourself in terms of your level as a performer, and also your ability to cope with a challenge, falling short, all these different kind of things that come with a result like that?
Yeah, it was. I'll start with the Tokyo situation because it's probably the more profound moment in my not just life, but also not just career, my life as well. It really changed my understanding of my relationship with sport. I think going into those games, I put so much pressure on the result and the outcome, and kind of diving in deep here pretty quickly. The relationship I had with my results was quite personal. So the reason why I got into sport was I struggled a lot with anxiety and depression when I was going through secondary school, and sport was kind of a way for me to manage that and also just kind of reinvent myself. And as I got healthier and better, my results were improving, and they kind of took a very similar trajectory. And kind of as I was going into that Tokyo games, I was kind of hitting my peak. I had broken my first world record going into just before those games, and I had this sort of fairy tale narrative in my head of that for me to win gold in Tokyo was going to be this storybook ending, and I was going to reveal myself to the world, this new version of me, and it didn't pan out. And I remember walking out to those games just with this insane amount of pressure on my shoulders, and I ultimately bottled it. I fell miles off sort of times I'd been doing consistently throughout the season, and I had to spend a long time sort of understanding why that happened. And, I came to that conclusion that I'd stopped enjoying the sport, and I wasn't swimming just for the love of it. I was swimming with so much pressure to try prove to myself and others that I was better. And I had this weird connection that the results were the proof that I was actually more confident. I didn't have that anxiety anymore. I wasn't depressed anymore. Which is very weird to say out loud, but that was the sort of mindset I had going on in my head. And when I actually spent a bit of time working with psychologists and therapists, I had all this other proof, you know, I could speak to strangers. I was making friends so easily. I had such a big support network that I didn't have when I first started my career in swimming. And the big takeaway I took from that is I had to kind of get back to the play of sport and really enjoying the day-to-day. And I spent a bit of time trying some other sports. I went into jiu-jitsu for a little bit, started climbing again. And yeah, it was a really important learning experience. And I can look back on that time now without the pain. And I know I'd kind of need to have experienced that miss. And to develop myself as an athlete going into Paris, where I won my 2 gold medals.
I mean, that's it. Obviously, when you sort of go through the whole journey, it's easier to look back and see like, well, you know, this was the shift I needed, and like, but obviously, still in the moment, it's, I mean, it's so difficult. And I really resonate with what you're saying. Like, I don't have the level of success, certainly in terms of medals that you've had, but like my whole value for a time was like completely resting on my identity, and which was completely caught up in my sport and how I saw myself. And so that unraveled me lots of times, and I've had to go through a whole process of kind of understanding why that's not the case. But I think it would be great. What I think would be amazing to kind of understand, because you're right, we got into that, you know, really sort of powerful deep bit very quickly. So it'd be great to just sort of understand a bit more of your story and like what sort of led to that. I mean, you talked about the depression and the anxiety and issues and so on, but obviously if you could give maybe a bit of backstory around like when you started swimming, when you started to notice issues with your disability and how that affected things and that sort of
So
process.
I swam a little bit as a junior, like from 12 through to 14, and I actually really hated it. I didn't thoroughly enjoy being dragged out of bed at 3:30 in the morning by my mom to go drive for an hour to training on a Saturday morning. It wasn't in my ideal way to spend my weekends. And so I fell out of love with the sport pretty quickly. I was kind of doing it because my older brother did it at the time, and it just seemed like a natural thing for me to try. And I was decent. I wasn't necessarily good by any metric even at that age, to my sort of counterparts of 13, 14-year-olds. And then I left the sport, started just focusing on school. That's when I started to sort of really notice the deterioration in my condition. So I've got Stargardt's, which is I've got a mutation of that condition which affects younger people, and it's a deteriorating condition, so it'll gradually get worse throughout my life. So I got my diagnosis at 9, but didn't really notice much about my disability at the time. And then as I've progressed through secondary school, I start to notice the sort of deterioration of my sight, which is where a lot of my mental health issues started stemming from. Not really understanding my place in the world, not really understanding what was happening to me, even though I had siblings going through the same thing. It's still quite a challenging thing for anyone to go through, as you can imagine. And I think my confidence was getting knocked consistently as I was starting to realize that not only that I was struggling to do some things that I find easy before, but also that people around me were telling me that I couldn't do these things because of this condition, which is probably the catalyst that I struggled with, that stemmed the anxiety and the depression more, because I really started to struggle to understand why people treated me so differently, even though at the time I didn't feel different. You know, there was some challenges, like the font I needed to read was slightly bigger and things like that, but for the most part I was the same person. But just because of a diagnosis, I felt like I was being treated very differently by teachers and family members and friends. And then kind of when that sort of anxiety peaked at around 18, I left school kind of underperformed, I'd say. I was quite academic in the early stages of my school time, and as I left, I kind of underperformed in results. and felt a bit lost, didn't really know how to progress. And I just thought I would give swimming a crack to get a bit of structure, not for any performance reasons, just to kind of get a bit fit again, get stronger, healthier. And it just really kind of snowballed from there as I found a bit of structure, just these things with my mental health started to fall into place, really. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of my youth, and how I sort of transitioned to sport.
You mentioned that you had siblings going through the same thing at the same time. So is this a genetic condition
Yeah.
and it's affected your siblings in the same way?
Yeah, so I'm one of four, so 3 out of 4 of us have the same eye condition. And I'm the youngest, so my eldest sister, Libby, he was a very accomplished runner, was really inspirational for me as a kid, and kind of inspired me to kind of get back into sport as well, as once I started to rediscover swimming. And yeah, it was an interesting experience kind of growing up in a family of 3, because it was normalized within the household, but also like then kind of the juxtaposition of society not really being that comfortable with disability still it was quite an interesting contrast.
Yeah, I mean, that's a super interesting balance. I mean, it's one thing learning to deal with this on your own and navigate life on your own. Another thing when you've got people around you who are also experiencing similar, but then you kind of have that, I guess it creates a bigger disparity of normal life, maybe at home, where it is, I guess, more accepted or more understood. And then you go out and then it's a bigger change among everyone else, and that must be quite surprising. Do you feel like it gave you any advantages, or did you only feel at that time it was just kind of barriers that were up in front of you? And if so, what did you do internally to overcome those barriers?
I mean, I think because I went to a special school, so I went to the Royal Blind School in Edinburgh. So I was very fortunate in the sense that I was surrounded by teachers who were specialised in teaching people with disability or visual impairment specifically. And I think having my 2 older siblings as a sort of, I don't know what the word I'm trying to find, but basically having already gone through those stages before me kind of gave me an understanding of what to expect as well. So there was a lot of advantages to having my 2 older siblings kind of go through that first, for sure. And I think the barriers I experienced were dissimilar to, I guess, barriers anyone else with a visual impairment would have experienced. Like, society fundamentally isn't really structured for people with visual impairments. Like, we live in a very visual world. I think technology has obviously improved that a lot, but I grew up in the 2000s, so technology wasn't as good as it is today, obviously. I don't know about barriers and how I overcome them. I think a lot of the stuff I overcame was obviously mental health related, and the way I've obviously overcame that was through sport. I think my perspective of the world changed a lot, and kind of what I value in people. I think I've obviously been through some experiences in social situations which not always been very pleasant. I think an example that I like to sort of remind myself of, and also just tell other people for references. This was in early 2022. I was at a bar in Edinburgh with 2 of my really good friends, and I was showing pictures of me on holiday because I just come back from a month in Brazil. And when I look at my phone, I look extremely closely. And I was just going through my camera roll, and my very good friend Michael went up to the bar to grab a drink while I was trying to find pictures of something specific. And whilst he was up there, there was a group of 3 guys that were pointing at me and laughing, and I was none the wiser. But in that scenario, he went over and confronted them and was like, "Oh, it's okay. You can laugh all you want. He's really successful. Like, just know that no matter how much you laugh, he's achieved more than you have," type of thing, and all this sort of stuff. And it's kind of stuck up for me without me even realizing it. And later he told me, and I was really pissed off and upset. I spent a couple of days being angry. And then I remembered, I was like, the reason why I'm friends with him is because I have this sort of, I was going to swear, I don't have a lot to swear out here, but BS filter of people, and I have this bullshit
Go for it.
filter
Go for it.
of people, you know. And I think my superpower is that I meet someone for the first time, I can tell when someone's comfortable with my disability or not. And the people I really value in my life are the people who straight away showed that they weren't uncomfortable, or that they could feel really relaxed around me. And Michael is my best mate, is the epitome of that. Like, he doesn't really care what you do for work or what you look like. He just cares about the character of your soul. And I think when I go through my entire life experiences, like, that's the one thing I'm really grateful for, with all the crap that I've experienced and the pain I've gone through. You know, I don't think I would trade it if I couldn't I don't think I would get rid of all that pain if it meant I didn't have this perspective of people I meet, and this appreciation for people's character and the way they sort of treat people. You know, and the sort of really, the part of that experience that really hit home is that had I not had this disability, and had I not had that perspective, I could have been one of those guys laughing at someone else with a disability or whatever it is that makes them slightly different to normal in society. And there's nothing worse to me than the idea of being one of those people. And yeah, I think when I look at sort of my hardships in life, if you want to call it that, I think that's the thing I'm really grateful for, is that perspective.
I mean, hearing you say that is really powerful. And as you were speaking and obviously telling that story, my mind went in two places. One big part of my mind is going, isn't that just awful that there's a big section of society where that is just where we go to those places and we laugh and we judge, and it's just awful. And then I'll be completely honest, like, then one side of me also thought, yeah, but you know, I mean, I've never done something completely like that in my life, but you don't always know how you're going to react to things, right? And it's to some degree it could be anyone, because people just don't understand situations, and things just happen, and it's sort of, you know, that's quite scary. So the fact that you see that as like one of your sort of superpowers and something that you find so valuable is really fascinating to me, and super powerful. And I suppose, like, what you said about sport and how sport kind of pulled you out of that, some of those issues, and gave you something to focus on. And then it sort of, in a sense, saved you, but then suddenly then it through success and through maybe some maybe a bit of lack of self-worth, or I'm not sure, trying to figure out your identity still, then you get very attached to sport, and then that spiraled into its own problem. It's quite an interesting, like,
yeah, I think
sort of
when
route.
I look at the sports side of stuff, it's like I forgot to remove my self-worth to the results, which I think is an experience every athlete goes through. I don't think that's unique to me. Obviously, I had a bit of a emphasis with sort of the
100%.
mental health side of stuff. Yeah, like, I think every diver, every swimmer, every runner will have gone through some sort of similar journey. I think that experience was maybe slapped in the face a bit more because of my past. Yeah, I forgot to detach my progress from my results in the pool, and I think the one negative part of sport is that it's so black and white in results, in terms of, like, regardless of what sport you do, like, you guys, you're divers, like, you still get a positioning on a table, and you attach your worth to that. And that was something I really struggled with. I felt like for me to tell myself that I was doing okay, I needed to be on the top of that list of names, which is just a really unhealthy relationship.
It's quite interesting that you use the word, or you use the phrase, you forgot to detach it, because that's, like, you can't forget to do something that you don't know you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think maybe the culture of sport is slightly shifting a little bit in this country, but there was definitely a time where that's what you were almost taught to do, and that was the directive. is that these results mean everything. It determines X, and if you don't achieve it, then, you know, what are we doing here? And yeah, it then makes it the only option to attach your self-worth to that result, because it means everything to this criteria, to this group of people, which essentially can help to build, support your life, or whatever it is, right? Financially or just through success. So like, I feel like sometimes you kind of have to go through it to understand that it's not the right thing to do. But also, I think it's then important for coaches and support staff and family members and all of the, you know, friends, whatever, to support the athletes in believing that it's okay to not attach your self-worth just to your results. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I think what's really interesting about sport is it's such like an echo chamber. Like, it's such a closed off world, and I think for the most part, people out with sport can't really fully understand the lifestyle and the choices we make as athletes, and just the sort of internal politics of sport. I think I'd say it's shifted up, like you say, it's definitely making a shift in sport now. But when I first came onto program, it definitely felt like from a governing body point of view, your worth was attached to your medals. And I experienced that myself going through my progression through sport. When I wasn't medaling, they weren't really that interested in me. And then all of us, they kind of actually, different story, they wanted rid of me for a little period at the start of my career, because I was a bit mischievous and caused a few issues. But as soon as I started to medal, they kind of changed their perception of me from this angry, rebellious, anti-authoritarian kid to leadership qualities, which I found quite funny. And the only thing that had really changed was my ability to win medals. So I think naturally, obviously, you do put your worth on your results, and I think, like I said, I think that has changed. I think governing bodies and the society as a wider, on the whole, is starting to wake up to the toll that performance sport has on athletes.
And speaking about this kind of societal element, which we kind of mentioned a little bit before, in terms of the fact that, you know, society is a visual society. People learn things in a visual way, and that's just the norm. It's the way things are done. But there's a large proportion of people that don't benefit from that way of doing things, yourself being one of those. You spoke before about kind of skill acquisition being very difficult for you because it's a visual thing. And that can be said for swimming, and also in many other aspects. I imagine you also had similar experiences at school, but I think, would you be able to kind of give people an insight in terms of like your process of acquiring skills and some of the challenges that you face, in terms of, you know, how people are just used to teaching, and then what you actually needed to learn effectively?
Yeah, so the skill acquisition element of my career was a really interesting evolution. Is when I started to really enjoy training, actually. For years, I felt like I was banging a drum and no one was listening, because I knew physiologically I was as strong and as fit as my able-bodied counterparts, but the times I was producing didn't really reflect that. And for my entire career, everyone from positions of power that I believe knew more than me about my own disability, which was silly, would just told me that my disability affected my ability to swim straight and timing of the turns and finish, and be able to spot those accurately. And, you know, even if you do a bad finish in swimming, it's not going to make a difference of several seconds over the course of 100 meters. So it didn't really add up in my head. And after a bit of a period of sort of figuring out why my times are so far off my able-bodied counterparts, I sort of came to a conclusion that the way I actually learn is very different, and that my disability isn't just visual, it's skill acquisition. So the world kind of generally is learns to learn. Sorry, learned to learn through visual medium. So, me included, as a kid, I was a visual learner. Most people are visual learners, and most people teach visually. So when a coach is on poolside, they doing visual demonstrations of where the stroke is supposed to look, and it makes sense. It's the easiest way to sort of understand mechanics. But obviously that doesn't work for me when I coach on poolside, even a couple of meters away from me. I can't see the detail of what he's trying to demonstrate. And swimming and as in diving as well, very technical sports. The fine details make huge difference. So me and my coach had to really sort of think about ways to bridge that gap. And swimming's very dense, so going through water is 800 times more dense than air. So we kind of tapped into that. So we'd use points of resistance to sort of increase my feel in the water. So we would, for example, we would put a hand paddle. So a hand paddle just kind of goes, big plastic thing that goes over your hand. And we would stick that on down the band of my trunks, and so it'd be up against my back. And the reason why I did that is so that when I was swimming in the water, I would be able to feel if my hips dropped below the water level, which you don't really want, because as soon as I would do that, the paddle would start flapping against my back because of the resistance of the water. So we'll do several different things like that my coach sort of began to implement, and I think he actually quite enjoyed sort of problem solving that issue for me, and he's implemented it into the careers of my teammates who are fully sighted and fully able-bodied as well. So it's quite cool that a problem that's occurred from my disability is being a way to sort of develop his coaching technique for not just people with disabilities, but for all athletes.
That's really powerful. That's amazing, and just super interesting. In that, what was created for a person with disability is beneficial for able-bodied people. I think a lot of people in the world wouldn't consider that, to be a thing. But exactly what your coach was doing in terms of the problem solving, my experience in coaching so far, that's exactly what I'm seeing. Like, I feel like coaching is just all about problem solving and finding solutions to different issues and different challenges, and how can you be creative to fix it. And I can understand how he would quite enjoy that process, probably just laying in bed one random night just thinking, I know exactly what we need to do for Freddie, and to figure out how to help him understand that. And that must be a really exciting journey for him to go on, to be supported by someone who's willing to experiment and almost, to a certain extent, be a guinea pig, as I'm sure you were with some ideas that didn't work as well as the paddle.
I think the thing is, it's like you're not gonna lose much from trying. Like, if you can try it and if it doesn't work, you've wasted 50 meters of a session. You can try a new experiment on a different method of performing a drill, and I'll do it and I'll be like, I didn't really feel anything from that, and you'll be like, okay, well, let's move on. And it's not the end of the world. It's 50 meters. We can just move on to the next idea and see if that sticks. And yeah, it can be tedious at times for him, I guess, because obviously sometimes he probably comes in with an idea that he thinks is brilliant and it doesn't pan out, or I'm not quite understanding the vision of the drill. But I think the trial and error is, I think, the evolution of sport, isn't it? So yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Innovation, all the way to revolution. Eventually. I mean, that is really interesting to me, though. I think, like, proprioception is such a massive thing, and like, that's one of the big problems with diving, is that once you're in the air, you have got almost no proprioceptive cues, because you're not touching the ground anymore. Like, you've got nothing. You've got little glimpses. You've got your body feeling, but you've got nothing physical or stable to give you that information. And I suppose, in a sense, like, obviously you're getting something from the water, but I'm sure the water can still be super confusing in terms of proprioceptive feedback. So that seems to me to be a really, really powerful skill to develop, because like the amount of times, for me, for example, we like in diving, you see like a diving replay, and like I'll watch myself, or I'll feel one thing, and then I'll watch it, and it's like, okay, that is not what I felt. Like that was way off. It's like my body is like not connected to what's actually happening. So I can see how why that must be so difficult for you, but also why maybe developing proprioception.
Yeah, that awareness was also like quite a challenging thing to build, because that's a skill as well as sort of that awareness in the water, or for you in, don't know what you call it, the fall, that fall process on where you're like doing your somersaults. Sort of that understanding of, is what I'm feeling actually what I'm presenting, is a really difficult skill to develop, and it's taken years, and I'm still feel like I have a long way to go on that. Sometimes my awareness is way off from what I think it is. So yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge when it comes to this sort of style of training, is that sort of self-awareness of connecting what you feel to what it actually results in.
But then my other thing as well, wondering, like coming into this this podcast, was like, where are you at now in terms of, because obviously, you know, being visually impaired in this way is clearly what we're discussing. Like that's a big disadvantage, but at the same time, that's enabled you to innovate and also develop other skills. Like what I kind of wondered, from your position, what has that made you think about maybe the assumptions of what the human body is capable of, and also the way we learn, and like how we could actually develop other areas? Because like exactly like you're saying, we're so reliant on sight. Like from what I understand, the large proportion of our brain is used for, like, it's visual from my understanding. I'm not a neuroscientist, but so yeah, like how clearly how has your sort of understanding and perspective on that sort of changed?
I think for me, what was actually really cool was when I went, because I said earlier, I went to a visually impaired specific school, so I was exposed to quite a broad range of people with visual impairments, and to this day, the most impressive individual I've ever met was a lad who was a year above me in school, called Saad, and he's from Saudi Arabia. He had a form of cancer when he was a toddler, and he had to get his eyes removed. So he had zero vision whatsoever, obviously, but he could navigate buildings outside without any sort of visual aid, so without a cane or without a guide dog, to an extent, not fully. Like he wouldn't be comfortable walking down the street by any means, but and the way he did that was through echolocation, which I thought was absurd, because as a kid I watched the movie Daredevil, which is obviously an exaggeration of echolocation, but I never believed it was actually something someone could actually do in real life.
Yeah.
And it broke my brain of the perspective of what the human body was capable of. And like to this day, I've met some incredible people, like Paralympic athletes, Olympic athletes, different disciplines, artists, musicians. No one's ever come close to him in terms of his capability, of what he was able to achieve, and just in terms of just being able to get around. And like he would walk down the hall and he would tell you that there's this chair there. I remember this was my first year of school, so he was a year older than me, but we did kind of a mixture of classes together, and one of them was swimming. And we were walking back up from the school swimming pool back up to the main school building. And he took my arm to kind of guide him, but he had a bet with me. He was like, I bet you can tell you every tree and lamppost that we pass. And this was probably a weekend to me being at school, and he got it every single one. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, there's no way you're blind. And it's just because I didn't realize it, but he talked the entire way. And as he was talking, he was listening to the sound bounce off objects, which, like, as I said, just broke my brain and just changed my perspective of people's capacity to adapt. And the difficult thing for me is that I still have a level of visual field and capability, so I quite lazy and I tend to lean on my vision too much. But yeah, whenever I'm feeling a bit crap about myself, or feel like or the opposite, where people are bigging me up, I kind of remind myself of what this guy could do, and he did some incredible things with his life. He was grade 8 pianist by the age of 10 years old. He decided in his last year of school that he wanted to go into software engineering, so crash course advanced higher computing, then went off to St Andrews and got a PhD in software engineering, and did these incredible things with his life. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, life can't be that bad.
That's crazy.
Wait. I mean, wait. So, I mean, I could understand maybe in like 2026 how he could be a software developer with, you know, vibe coding and like chatting to just, you know, voice command. But
I'd honestly don't know. He's to this.
Comprehend.
Yeah, he would use VoiceOver on his computer. So like Apple's probably the best company in the world for accessibility. Like you will find whenever you turn on a new iPhone or a new Mac, that they'll ask you if you've basically got a visual impairment. So they kind of prioritize visual impairments for even their setup, which is really impressive. But like the actually more impressive thing, and as I've got older and kind of got a bit more intelligent, kind of understanding how hard this concept was. I remember I was chatting to our physics teacher, and she was a huge fan of Sad. She thought he was incredible. Everyone did, because he was. But he did advanced higher physics, and he got 99% in his physics exam. And she said that's impressive on its own. Yeah. Said that's impressive on its own, but what's more impressive is that for someone who has no visual memory, his ability to understand how light works is incredible. Is that, imagine trying to explain how light works for someone who's never seen it. I don't even know where to begin. And he had this really in-depth understanding of how light had waves and could bounce, and it's just remarkable. Sorry, I realised I just deflected this podcast off me onto my schoolmate from 20 years ago.
Yeah, forget about you, Cleggy. Come on.
But this is so interesting, and like you used a line a little while ago. You said something like you got lazy and lent on your vision too much. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say anything like that before. But, you know, this guy you're speaking of, I mean, phenomenal, first of all. Like, what an amazing person. But, you know, it kind of shows sometimes it's actually quite nice to have maybe a lack of bias, like to really understand something. You don't have that bias because you have experienced it. For example, like his understanding of light is, I guess, purely theoretical, so you can really understand and apply the theory of it, and that increases the understanding because he has no bias, because he's never experienced it before. And I think that's a really powerful metaphor, in that sometimes what you don't experience, or what something that you don't know, can be something like extremely powerful to learn about and understand, and you can actually have a very strong perspective, a very strong understanding of something that you don't experience. Because
I think that's the old
natural bias.
It's the old. I think it was a Jackie Chan movie or something like that. I saw it, and it was like you can't fill a cup that's already full type of thing, and you need to empty your cup before you can learn something new. And you kind of have to forget everything you understand about a topic before you can take on all this information, which is probably his gift in that scenario. Is that he had no understanding of what light was or what color was, and he was able to learn from the beginning.
But
it's probably something we all experience as well.
Well, no, exactly. It's exactly true. But I think what's also interesting is that you said that your condition is degenerative, right? So it will continuously get worse as you get older, I presume. So, you know, knowing someone like that and knowing how amazing someone like that is, does that give you hope? And how much do you, again, going on what you said about leaning on your vision too much and being lazy, but do you kind of almost consciously prepare for that transition eventually?
Yeah, I think for me it's interesting because I constantly have to adapt to my ability level and the tools I have available to me with my vision. And I've just gone through another transition in the last year or so when my sight has taken a big drop. So each time I have kind of go through that deterioration of vision, I have to go through a process of adapting and relearning skills and learning how to adapt to tasks that to everyone else seem subconscious and things you won't even think about, like walking down the street at night for me now is a lot more challenging. I have to consciously look for people coming at me, otherwise I'm going to walk into them. I'm kind of hitting that stage of my life now where I should maybe look at transitioning into using some sort of visual aid like a cane or a guide dog. But for me, it's actually quite difficult for me to make that decision and make that jump because I think I tie a lot of my self-worth into my independence. And I think one thing I really like about my condition is it's a bit silly, and I kind of go back and forth whether I'm being ridiculous or not, but is I like that I get to choose when to tell people, because I think when most people see me, unless you're really sort of paying attention or unless I look at my phone, like I said, you're not going to notice that I can't see. Like I don't have the sort of typical visual characteristics of someone who's registered blind, and I like that I get to choose when I tell someone for the first time that I have a visual impairment, because it's something quite personal to me, and I'm not ashamed of my condition by any time, so I don't want anyone listening to think that I'm ashamed of being disabled, and that's why I like to keep it secret. I think I don't want people to make a decision on the kind of person I am based off my disability before they've ever spoken to me. Which kind of links back to that story I told you in the bar earlier, is that those guys were making a snap decision about me as a person, and took it upon themselves to make fun of that without actually ever speaking to me, getting to know me, and making a decision on who I am as an individual rather than what I look like or how I sort of look at things. And yeah, it's a sort of I think that's sort of the link to sort of, I call it my superpower of being able to sort of get that BS filter from people. And an example I use is on dates, for example. Like I'll go on a date with someone and I go through the first 20 minutes of getting to know them. Chemistry's going, chat is really good. And then comes up in conversation, or I bring it up, direct the conversation to tell them I have a visual impairment, and then the awkwardness sets in and the chemistry kind of disappears and the flow of the conversation stops. And I like that I get to see how they react to finding out that news when I tell them, because it gives me a sense of their character. And when I met my current girlfriend, Caitlin, when we went on our first date, the thing I remember so vividly about our first date is when I told her, she was like, "Oh, that's awesome." Like, she just started asking questions and so intrigued by it. And yeah, it wasn't discomfort, it was interest. And I think that's what I really like about kind of keeping that, being able to share that on my own terms.
That's also what I'd really love to ask in a similar vein about, therefore, the kind of your idea and your philosophy behind parasport and how it should sort of be accepted, and the sort of pushback on, I think, what you refer to as like inspiration porn, and how and whereas, and the differences between, therefore, able-bodied or fully able-bodied athletes and parasport. And could you talk us through like what that is, what your vision of that is, and how you would like parasport to be and para athletes to be
Yeah,
viewed?
so that's really interesting because that's something I've been thinking a lot about in the last year or so. Is sort of the perception of parasport currently, and I think it's still to an extent seen as a bit of a feature event, the Paralympic Games, which is I find quite sad, and I don't really understand why that is, because like some of the things para athletes do is truly remarkable. I don't think some Olympic gold medalists can do some of the things that some Paralympic gold medalists or just Paralympians in general have been able to overcome and achieve. And I think the way I kind of thought about it was that I feel like the Olympics is for people tune into the Olympics to see what the pinnacle of human capability is under perfect circumstances are. That's like the Olympic gold medals when something's like everything's fallen into place, like they've had the perfect preparation, they've had all the resources, all the sort of advantages in their sport. And not to say that they don't deserve their gold medal or that is not impressive. Winning the gold medal is remarkable. I'm not trying to take anything away from what Olympic athletes achieve. But I think people kind of look at the Paralympics and be like, oh, well, it's not as fast as the Olympics or it's not as strong as the Olympics. But I feel like they kind of got the wrong idea. You should be looking at the Olympics to see what the ultimate pinnacle of human capability is under the perfect circumstances. And you should be looking at the Paralympics as seeing what the human spirit can achieve under the worst circumstances. And they're both extremely impressive. But I feel like the Paralympics is a human story, and everyone in the world has their issues and has their setbacks in life, and no one's life is an easy road. But people should be looking at Paralympians and being like, holy fucking shit, look what they can achieve under circumstances are likely going to be worse than what they are having. Like, let me get off my couch and kind of keep going. So, and then the other side of that is, yes, I think you use the terminology inspiration porn, and I think us para-athletes don't want to be seen as a pity project in a sense. Like, people don't want to be seen and be like, oh, well done for getting out of bed. Like it's not that. We are doing these really incredible things just like our able-bodied counterparts, but we're dealing with all these setbacks. And I don't think we should be ignoring the challenges we overcome. I think you should wear your scars proud and loud, and kind of use that as a lesson to give people a path out of their own sort of pain and ruts that they're in.
It's a really powerful and strong and important message, and that's why I think really wanted to make sure that we covered all bases in terms of this podcast, because honestly, some of the Paralympic stories that we've had so far have been the most eye-opening in many ways. And I think maybe that's also part of the challenge, is that it's quite hard to really comprehend what Paralympians are experiencing and what they do have to go through to even get onto that start line, because for the majority of people, we aren't exposed to those circumstances. So it's quite hard to really get that full understanding sometimes, because people just don't have those experiences. But then once you really listen to the stories, you see a lot of kind of similarities, crossovers, and I think it's really important for that reason to make sure that voices like yours and all the other guests that we've had are amplified to show that you're still human. Like, yes, you've got this impairment that affects a certain aspect of your life, but you're still human. You move like a human, you talk like a human, and the sporting requirements are still intense, and people can learn a tremendous amount from you all.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing to add, I think that's probably the biggest gripe of Paralympians, is that they seem to think that it's just something you can just walk into. It's like, oh well, I've had this car accident or whatever horrific thing that's happened to you. I'm just going to become a Paralympian. It doesn't happen like that. We still do all the same training. I train in a team that's predominantly able-bodied. I train with one other para athlete out of a squad of 20. So, our team is predominantly able-bodied, and I do all the same training that all my teammates do. Nothing I'm doing is different. I'm still training like an able-bodied world-class athlete. I just compete at the Paralympics instead of the Olympics, and the workload that takes to get to the top, and especially to gold medals or a medal table, a podium is comparable to what our able-bodied counterparts are doing as well. So I think you kind of touched on it there. It's we have this impairment, but it doesn't really change our experiences in sport. We still kind of go through all the same things.
And that being said, you've recently gone through an injury and a setback in that respect. As you mentioned before as well, also dealing with a change in your vision as well. How have you managed that period of injury, plus the other changes that have been going on in your life? How has that been, and what's kind of helped to motivate you push through it and get back to where you want to be?
Honest answer, it's been pretty difficult. Like kind of having both of them hit at the same time has been quite difficult. They've both kind of come together to give me a lot of reason to just have that internal doubt of just stop, and sort of quit while I'm ahead. Like internally, I know I don't want to do that, but there's still that thought process at the front of my mind. I had operation on my shoulder last summer, and it was a result of the injury that I that developed during the Paralympic Games in Paris. So I spent pretty much the entire season out of the water just through pain, not really being able to train, kind of not really understanding why I was in pain as well, and at the same time taking that breath, as you'll know, Yona and Freddie, that when you sort of take that step away from the games, you kind of feel quite lost. And that's not unique to me having an injury, but I think me having that injury kind of took me a step away from the sport, and I had to really sort of make a decision whether or not I wanted to keep going. And that kind of coupled with my vision loss, kind of planted more seeds of doubt in my brain. I talked a lot about this with a sports psychologist. So it's like these 20s, my 20s and younger have been my visual life, and I spent a lot of that time, my prime seeing years, looking at a black line of a pool, which isn't the best way to use your vision by any stretch. And I really had to sit and think whether or not it was worth it, me spending another 3 or 4 years staring at that black line when I could be out experiencing the world. And as you both know, sport gives you a lot of opportunities, but also is very restrictive in what you can do. You can't really go out and experience the world in the same way, in the same level of freedom that other people have in traditional workplaces. So I was really struggling to sort of make that decision whether I wanted to keep going. To be honest, up until quite recently, I was still struggling with that. I think my saving grace was Commonwealth Games this summer. I was like, well, I've got something to train towards. And once I kind of made that decision to at least let's just try for Commonwealths and see what happens, I started to rediscover my love for the sport. And I think my value as an athlete needs to be more than just results. Like I said earlier, it's not just about how I feel about myself as well. It's about the impact I have on other people, and hopefully demonstrate a pathway for people with visual impairments to discover sport, whether that's swimming or any other not even just sport, actually, any sort of discipline that gives him passion. I think I worked with the RNIB charity, which is the blind charity in the UK, the main blind charity in the UK, and I was in a meeting with different board members, and I was talking about inspiring people with visual impairments to do sport because it's been so beneficial to me. And she said, well, what if people don't want to be a performance athlete? And I was like, oh yeah, it's not actually that great of a lifestyle for the most part. You have some incredible moments and experiences, but for the most part, it's pretty awful. And that's when I sort of changed my perspective of as it needs to be more than just sport. It needs to be discovering art, music, whatever it is. And I think that's going forward. I want to sort of utilize my career to show people with visual impairments that those are options for them, and that their life isn't predetermined by other people's perspectives. I think, like, I use Sad as an example of someone who's incredible and inspirational, but there is a serious issue with people with visual impairments that they're taught from a very young age that they can't do X, Y, and Z because of their visual impairment. And that's just fundamentally not true. You might have to adapt, and you might have to spend a longer time learning and adapting to become proficient or get to a level where you enjoy what you do, but you're by no means determined by your disability and what you're allowed to try. And I think a lot of people in society, and I think especially parents, are scared of their kids hurting themselves. And I think a broken leg will heal in a few couple months, but if you destroy their ability to believe in their own capabilities, they'll be broken for life. And it took me discovering sport to sort of heal that wound and sort of have that belief that I can really try anything, and that my options are a lot broader than people led me to believe. And I think my experience is a rarity, unfortunately. But my hope is that through sport and hopefully through campaigning for this going forward, that can be a more common story, and also a rarer story in terms of people believing that they can't do anything.
Well, yeah, that is the amount of times I just said in my head as you were speaking, it's like, damn. And you're so right. The way what we tell ourselves is everything, isn't it? It's absolutely everything. And again, whilst you were speaking and talking about wanting to be an inspiration, I just thought about this pretty crazy story. Very, very well. This is about you in Paris, and how I believe it's your niece, Adeline. Is that correct?
Yeah, my niece Adeline. Yeah. So my niece, she got diagnosed with a form of a cancer that affects her retina, and they're super lucky that they caught it. It was a kind of crazy story. It was Christmas a few years ago. We were taking pictures with the flash on, and my brother-in-law, the father of Adeline, noticed that her eyes looked a bit funny with the flash. And I can't remember what it was. It's like one eye popped up, was flashing bright, and the other one wasn't, or something like that. And he was like, "Oh, I think that he had this crazy trivia in his head that was a sign of a detached retina or something like that." I can't remember exactly. But anyway, literally Boxing Day, they rushed her to the hospital, and he was right, and she had a mass behind her eye. So she had a rare form of cancer that affect her eye, and they were able to get her treatment. She's doing really well. But yeah, she came out to watch me in Paris as well, and I think that was really special for me. As soon as I won my gold, I went up to the stands and got a great picture of her holding my medal and stuff like that. And my nephew as well, Libby's son, also has a visual impairment, so he's just been diagnosed last year. So hopefully that's, he's got great role models around him. with his mum as well, who's, like I said, was an incredibly accomplished athlete. We're actually, I think we're tied on medal tally, which is annoying because I want to beat her. So, but
Is that the real motivation?
it is. Yeah, that's why I can't retire yet. I can't leave her. I can't retire until I've got the edge. But yeah, no, I think it's nice to see that sort of impact on a young generation, and know that they have at least a little bit of hope of what people with visual impairments can do. Thankfully, Adeline's sight is getting restored, and she appears to have very high function of her eyes. So, but like I said, Edward, who's my nephew, got diagnosed last year. So, it's nice that even if it's close, my career, my experiences can serve as a sort of a shining light for their future.
Well, that's all you can do sometimes, and I think the benefit of having success in this world is being able to give back and give hope to others, to show them the path that you've gone down, and you know what they can potentially achieve by going through it despite the adversity that you may face, and that's a shining example of it. And you know, can't wait for LA 2028 when you know you're there and Libby comes out of retirement, just to make sure that you don't beat her medal tally. Because I know
she did transition to cycling, but she never. Yeah, she transitioned to cycling. I was a bit worried for a little bit, but then she decided to retire completely. So thank God for that. Otherwise, I would have been screwed.
But yeah, I mean, this conversation has been really extremely deep and profound in many more ways than I anticipated, beyond even just the kind of specific impairment side of things. It is all about, I feel like belief and hope is two of the kind of key themes that I'm picking up from this. And you know, with the summer that you've got upcoming and the comeback that you've had, you know, there must be a lot of belief and hope going into the Commonwealth Games this summer, which is super exciting for you. What are you most looking forward to for this summer?
I think for me, like, Commonwealth Games in Birmingham was still to this day one of the highlights of my career. I think, you know, I was sharing a pond with the divers, so that's how I got to meet you, Yona, and I got to meet James and Grace, and kind of having that sort of exposure to different sports, and it felt like a really close-knit group. Felt like a family. I don't want to sound corny, but like, I feel like Team Scotland representing Scotland in Birmingham was just sort of really wholesome experience for me in my career that I've not really felt on the same level at other moments in my career. And I think when I was kind of going through that period of doubt whether I wanted to carry on, that was the reminder I had, is that this is an opportunity for me to compete on a world stage with not just people I'm familiar with in Scotland, but also just my teammates that I train with on the daily. You know, I don't really get that at a Paralympic level. Up until this year, I was the only para-athlete. I'd only gone to Paralympic Games. I'd been the only Paralympic athlete from Edinburgh Uni going to the Games. Whereas going to a Commonwealth Games, I'm competing. I'll get to train go there with my able-bodied teammates, which is really special. And you know, you guys will understand this. You sometimes get more nervous watching your friends compete than you are when you compete yourself. And it's really nice to be able to see their hard work pay off and be there for the pinnacle of their sporting career. And a lot of the guys I trained with from when I joined the team are retiring this year, so it's going to be a really nice ending to that journey and that chapter of my career and also theirs. So I think being there for them is sort of what I'm looking forward to going through this season.
Wonderful, man. I mean, just just before we name this episode, I just want to ask, thinking back to that 14-year-old version of you that packed in the swimming and that was struggling with confidence and anxiety and identity and all those things, where you are now with everything you've achieved and who you've become, and some of also the leadership roles and the sort of the almost like spokesperson roles you moved into, what message would you want to give to that 14-year-old version of Stephen?
Two things, I think. One is like this quote. People think bravery is the absence of fear, but bravery is when you're scared, but you do it anyway. I think that's probably something I would have liked to tell myself when I was a teenager. And the other thing is kind of along the similar vein, is the best things in life really are on the other side of fear. You've got to take that jump to really experience life to its fullest. And it took me a while to sort of understand that, but I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I learned that quicker than most, but through my experiences. But yeah, I think if I could go back to my 14-year-old self and sort of give some words of wisdom, that's what I would say.
That's two really great messages and valuable quotes. And all that being said, though, the way that you've been able to create opportunities for yourself and find the success, you've done all right, despite maybe not learning those lessons as quick as you could have done. So you've done pretty well, I think.
I was going to say, yeah, I guess if you wanted to put positive spin on it, I guess some people go through their entire life without learning that lesson. So some people are in their 60s and 70s and still have gone through life too scared to take a risk or to bet on themselves. And so I guess I can use that sort of positive spin to feel better about myself.
Exactly that. Just to close off this main episode, it's time to find out the name and the title. So the question that we ask every guest is, if your life and career to this point was a movie, what would the title be?
Through the Wreckage.
Through the Wreckage.
Through the Wreckage.
It kind of sums up my career.
What? Through the Wreckage. Wow. What comes to mind most when you think about Wreckage?
I think my life experiences and my career has just been a series of obstacles, and obviously some pretty low and dark periods. But I can stand here now and I'm pretty happy with the way my life turned out. And I think when I kind of turned back the clock 15 years, I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think I would ever get here. There's obviously some pretty dark periods where I was struggling to keep moving forward. So I think when I think about Through the Wreckage, it's me standing on the other side, knowing that I kind of got through it, and managed to pull through.
I've almost got this image in my mind of you kind of just like stood like Superman beast mode, just like looking over your shoulder, and then there's just like debris just like strewn off left and right all over the place, and this like real clear path that you've just almost stubbornly persevered through to get to this point now.
Yeah.
And it's like, right, that's that. Now what's next? And
Yeah,
it's an amazing, it's an amazing image that I've got in my head, and what it feels to me is just exactly the type of person that I know you are, like extremely determined to find a way, no matter what, and kind of not scared to do what needs to be done to get where you need to go, but also like very humbly and in a way that you just can't feel any kind of negativity or anything about it, so that's
That means a lot.
cool
Thank you.
I just kind of had in my mind.
It means a lot to hear from you, Yona, as well. Like you're very inspirational as well. Like what you've done with your career and the legacy you've kind of built with the clinics you run in Jamaica, and kind of what you've represented in sport is really impressive.
Appreciate that, mate. Appreciate it a lot.
Too right. Yeah, well, it's been amazingly inspiring for me, Cleggy, so thank you so much, man. It's just, and I think it's what you said, Yona, earlier about like the gift actually of high performance, and in your words, Steve, like just looking at that black line in the swimming pool, the gift of that and what you've gone through and what you achieved is being able to help and inspire others, which is so powerful.
Yeah, I think that's the next chapter for me, is trying to figure out how to present my experience in a way that's beneficial to someone some way,
I'm sure you'll find a way.
Yeah. Through the wreckage. Well, that is where we will end this main episode. So we're going to thank Stephen, but he is sticking around for one more dive. So if you're not there yet, the link is in the show notes. And wherever you're consuming this, whether it's YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, feel free to subscribe, like, share it. We'd really appreciate that. And otherwise, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks. Cheers, guys.